Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this latest GTR webinar instalment. My name's Jeff Andel, and I'm delighted to be hosting today, held in partnership with our friends at the London Institute of Banking and Finance. We've been heartened to receive so much positive feedback on these webinars so far. It's clear that the trade finance community remains keen to stay connected, to share both expertise and experiences of how others are adapting to this new way of living. Indeed, the changes to our ways of living and how we work forms the basis for today's session, focused on how professionals can continue to develop and maintain their specialist knowledge during these difficult times. As we're all aware, shutting down world economies to try and prevent the spread of COVID-19 has hit global trade and its practitioners hard, with challenges arising that none of us could have predicted. We'll be addressing some of these challenges during the next 45 minutes. Before that, however, if I can just add a bit of housekeeping, please do use the Q&A function in webinar screen to submit questions, rather than the chat function, which we won't be using. We've had a few questions submitted already, so that's very encouraging. We've got some time allocated at the end to go through any questions, so do feel free to engage. I think we can agree there are no stupid questions in this climate. I'm delighted to first be joined by Alex Gray, Head of Trade and Transaction Banking at LIBF, and responsible for all of its trade qualifications and training. Alex is relatively new to the role, and I imagine this is not what he was expecting when he joined. It will, however, be hugely interesting to hear how LIBF have adapted to the current situation, what the latest initiatives are, and how those undertaking qualifications have responded. Alex, welcome.
Oh, thanks very much, Jeff. Hello, everybody out there. Some good morning, some in the afternoon. So thank you for joining us. And to cover some of the things, when I first took on this role, I thought that I would be doing a lot more travel. I thought I'd be traveling out to various parts of the world, visiting our customers where a lot of the training is happening. So that would be, main parts being China, India, Korea, Bangladesh, but that's not happened. So we've been doing a lot of interaction with our customers by webinar. I've already been on the Zoom this week to China and to Korea this morning. So that's the way we're interacting with our partners, reacting to the various bits of feedback that they have about various things. The first thing that came up back in February was the concern out in Asia about the exams that we have for our two main qualifications, CDCS for documentary credits and CSDG for guarantees. And those exams happen twice a year in April and October. So we have postponed those to July, and that is a fair amount of work to go on, arranging with the exam centres on doing that. So those exams are going to be in July and then again in October. So some people have deferred to October, but many people will be doing it in July. So good luck to all of those people. Maybe some of them are on the call today. So in terms of what we're doing to adapt, what would happen is quite often people would do the exams, they would do the qualifications while they're at work, working in the evenings, and also they would be able to talk to their colleagues about what they're studying, and also to get maybe some input. That's not happening because people are not working side by side at the moment. So with that in mind, we're arranging a number of webinars about our all 6 of our qualifications, starting tomorrow, but with the supply chain one, but they'll be coming over the next couple of months. So a chance to people to ask questions about the various specific qualifications. But also we're looking to adapt, what's happening with the whole COVID environment is such that many tech advances are happening, and we're looking to move along with that as well. We've been looking at a number of things, and what's the good thing is that actually we've accelerated that. So for our on-demand exams, we'll be looking to have remote invigilation before the autumn. Remote invigilation allowing to do your exam away from a centre, because of course people are not wanting to go to the test centres. So that's for the on-demand qualifications, where that's CITF, Certificate of International Trade Finance, the supply chain, the trade finance compliance one, and for international payments. So all that is happening in terms of some of the changes we've made. and still trying to keep in contact with our various partners. I would much rather be out traveling, but that's not going to be happening. So we've also been looking at, engaging with the various students we have joined today by Tamara Mari Newhouse. She is at HSBC in terms of being open. We used to work together. I used to work at HSBC and at Santander. But Tamara was in the team and the trade operations, and is, I saw that when I worked with her, I didn't realize she was an MA in Human Relations and Employment Law. Maybe a lot of our colleagues know that, but that's very impressive. And also political science and management studies. So she's not afraid to study, and she has done our qualification, CSDG, certified in demand guarantee, specialist in demand guarantees. And so, hello Tamara, and thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So because I think what one of the things is that we want to talk about is the experience of doing the qualification and how you found it, because people don't get that opportunity at the moment to speak to people about these sort of things. Everybody's very busy, especially yourself in your trade ops role. So thanks for taking the time, and thanks to your boss, because I know your boss is Dave Kimberlin, so I'd like to say thanks to him. He's a legend in not only in HSBC, but also outside in the rest of the world as a guarantees specialist. So thanks to David for letting you take the time out today. But just what I'm interested in, you joined HSBC in sort of mid-career, you had a different kind of role. So I'm just interested in why you looked at doing the demand guarantee qualification.
When I started in 2015, my previous career was I spent 10 years being a site manager. And that is all I knew. I knew how to manage people, structure people. I made a decision that I wanted to learn something else or learn another role. So I changed and decided to do banking. I entered banking not knowing anything about guarantees or trade or how guarantees function. And for me, the easiest way to learn something is to do qualifications in it. I use that as a learning tool across my life. I find that it works for me. And so I continue that trend by signing up for the CSDG course.
So how did you, apply it? Because it's different at the moment because, everybody can't go out. But in those times you were having to commute to work and, you've got other, friends and family. So how did you apply in terms of getting the studying done?
Well, I approach it as a job. I approach it as any other job that needs to be done. I knew that a lot of the things I was doing in my day-to-day course, there was something in my book. So we would start as going to look in my book to see, can I learn something else about what documentary credit is or how other things function. I also have my commute, which is probably about 2.5 hours round trip.
Round trip. Okay.
I thought it was... And I use that as part of my learning. So I can sit on the train with flashcards and have a look. I can go through the book just to see what something is, read up on a definition. And then I'm focused in saying that I'm following the guide to do an hour learning every day or 3 hours learning a week initially, and then gradually increase that. I was lucky as well because a lot of people in my team did it at the same time. So we did probably stay back an hour after work twice a week to go through and to interact and to talk out some of the things.
I remember seeing some of you guys, studying in the meeting room at the end, and I was very impressed. It also works in a kind of collegiate way, and maybe that's something that people in other who are looking at this or doing these things can do that within their office, but they could also do it like we're doing it on a Zoom. We have Zoom chats with our friends. They could also do it with their colleagues if they're studying at the same time, potentially. Yeah. I think people are more used to this as a way of doing things now than they were maybe a few months ago. Yeah.
I think we've totally changed our approach in how we look at the resources that we have and how we use them effectively. And this using Zoom is one of the things that you can get so much out of and can help to normalize your everyday work.
Yeah, I remember with the studying, because I joined LIBF, London Institute of Banking and Finance, in January, and one of the bits of interesting data I saw, which quite shocked me, and I'm sure it's a reflection of my age, being in my 50s, that, and probably the fact, the eyesight, I've been, might be wearing the glasses sometimes. But so many people access our content on their mobile phones. Maybe they know how to change the font size, but you were telling me you were looking at the content on your phone. Because of course it's portable, and then if you're on a commute, you can't get out sometimes. Way. Yeah, so there's a lot of people that are doing it that way. So whatever way works for them. And if you're commuting and you're not driving, then maybe there's audio books as well. The things you can listen to if you're driving, potentially. We have various podcasts on this kind of material around as well. So, but you did it. How long did you take to study? You applied for it, then how long did it take for you? How long did you study for?
I think I did about 2 months, because I was aware that I was actually building my foundation. There are a lot of the terms in the office I was working in that I wasn't familiar with. So I paced myself, and I gave myself enough time to assimilate the information, not feeling pressured, and doing the last minute thing. So I think I did probably a good 2.5 months.
Because that actually, from everybody that does the studying, whether it be for our qualification or other qualification, that's quite intense. If you don't mind me saying so, maybe a reflection of your thirst for knowledge and studying. So maybe not everybody's like that, but we do recommend that maybe about 6 months, but in this environment, maybe people can do it more quickly. But I think I should clarify that your approach was quite intense. So good on you. So when you so the exam, and I'm thanks for coming on today, because you did tell me you would share your experience of the exam. If only in the world we learn by what we do, and often we learn more from the mistakes we make. And I certainly know that from trade ops. When mistakes were made, you learn from that for the next time. So you've said you would share your experience. So if you don't mind, because the exam didn't quite work out, did it?
No, no, it didn't. I had a problem with time management the first time I did it. So I did it one time and I failed, and I attempted it again and I passed. But the initial stage that I did it, I didn't manage my time well. I had a plan, and I love a plan. This wasn't such a good plan. I decided to do the second part of the exam first, because that was more application of the knowledge. And I felt that I had the knowledge. So I was giving myself the freedom of having all that time. Well, I kind of spent too much time on that second half. And when I was told that I had probably about half an hour left, I still had most of my multiple choice questions left to do. And so it was running around trying to get it done. In the last 5 minutes, I still had 15 multiple choice questions to do. And I ended up only doing 90% of the paper, because I left 10 questions that I didn't get to whatsoever. I got 69%, which is 1 mark. Yes. So I failed by 1.
You've told me the story before, but it's still quite sad. So
yes.
But it's a great lesson, because the exam is structured in a way that's to enable that thing. But what you're talking about, I don't know if you watch some of these cookery competitions. It sounds like you're at the end. It's all getting frantic. So there's a reason for why the exam is structured that way.
Yes.
So, but the good news is you were able to come back, and then
I had the knowledge. I knew I had the knowledge. I identified my faults and what it is that went wrong. I just knew that I needed to execute the next time, and I did. I executed and I passed, and I was better for it, because I I was backing up the information I had when I did sit down to revise on my second attempt.
And the thing is, though, so when people that are doing these, they're doing the learning. Of course, I'm biased with the LIBF, but of course, maybe with other people. But do you find that during that time you were able to apply, even though you hadn't done the exam and had the letters after you, were you able to apply the stuff as you were learning it in your work?
Yes, yes. That part of the plan did work. That it created that foundation I needed to understand what guarantees, understand how they work, and understand the logical intricacies of going through the process. It was, for me, it was excellent, and I actively promote the course to all my peers.
Yeah, no, because you told me that. So there's a few people I know that when I was working with you, I would say to people, have you thought about the qualifications, CDCS or CSDG? And they're like, oh, because when I'm the boss, and whereas you've got somebody like yourself who's a peer and who's actually gone through it and is doing well from it. It's a great way of you're sort of like an advocate. So thank you for doing that. I mean, what's interesting is that when I joined LIBF, I didn't know that LIBF was the people that did these qualifications. I hadn't connected the two names. In all our organizations, we've all got, there's all abbreviations. Here we are, GTR today, talking about CSDG and CDCS. You worked at HSBC, I work at LIBF. It's all about letters, isn't it?
It is.
But I believe you've applied, you're thinking about doing another one. Is that right? Another qualification? Because
yes, I am.
You just can't stop. You just got this thirst for knowledge.
I'm now interested in compliance. I find that probably that would be something that's suited to my strength. And so I have applied internally, that's with HSBC, to do this. I'm waiting on approval to do that, but I assume that would be October, probably.
Well, now that you're on here talking about it, hopefully this will help your campaign to get approval for that. But no, I mean, the compliance, what's interesting is that, with CDCS, that is our most popular qualification. But, that's been going for 21 years. So we have other ones, and the compliance one is newer. And we're seeing a great interest in that. But there's also not only for people on the trade side, but also could be people from compliance side. So a bit like what you were talking about, going new into guarantees and a way to learn it quickly. It could be for compliance people who maybe know about compliance, but they don't know so much about trade. So it's a potential opportunity there. So, I mean, I am slightly biased. I've done a bit of compliance training in my past, and I'll be doing the webinar about the qualification. And that it's with all the things that have been going on, it's quite the growth area. So hopefully you're successful in that, and I'll look for your registration at some point. And then knowing that you know how to do the exams efficiently, I'm sure you'll be okay.
Yes.
and in that respect, we talked about the exams, the remote invigilation, the ability to do those exams. You wouldn't have so in the future you could potentially be doing that at home.
Yeah.
But the remote invigilation, it's normally done where you couldn't really do it like if you had a home library. Where you are now would work quite well. There's not too many things around that you could be using to cheat. So I don't know if have you ever done remote invigilation?
No.
And so it's a bit like you're doing the exam, and there's somebody in a call center somewhere checking that you're not cheating.
Okay.
But it's a very good tool. Essentially, everybody's honest anyway, so it works very well. I did it once at HSBC, and I used a meeting room, so that's very easy because there's nothing around. But that's something that we'll be looking for our qualifications for the on-demand ones, so that people don't have to travel. And in some ways, there's people go to do the exams in various countries. They say, thinking like, well, in India, for example, or China, enormous countries, they might not be working close to a center in Mumbai or Delhi or Shanghai or Beijing. and therefore they can just do the qualification, you know, from their own branch, you know, if they can get to the workplace. So that's something that you know, we're looking at. On the other side, you know, we were doing training courses. We had a whole lot of training courses that were meant to be delivered in person, and we're now speaking to various organisations about doing those things virtually. So have you ever done a virtual training course?
I have.
Oh yeah, really? Because so what was that one? Were you contributing like back and forth, or was it just one person delivering?
It was one person delivering.
Yeah, because what we're looking at is doing the delivery, but also the ability to have you know, maybe not hundreds of people, so maybe 20 people, and you can see the people and see their faces, you know, because that's the thing, is seeing whether they see and understand, and then they can raise their hand virtually or physically, and then there can be breakout groups as well, which as a trainer you can go just as you would in a training room. You would go to see you understand and help. The only catch with these virtual training is that you don't get free tea and coffee and biscuits. You have to supply your own. So the good thing is for a bank is that they save on that money. They don't have to pay for the biscuits. But you know, having done training in various places over the past year, the law firms, I promise you, they do the best biscuits. Seem to have the budgets. But you know, and in terms of that, that's what we're finding is that the budgets are being restricted at various banks as times are difficult, and that's why the virtual training could be interesting. I know you, Tamara, would be you wouldn't have a problem with that ability to do that kind of thing, and let's hope other people think that way as well, because it's becoming the kind of the new way of doing things, and people are more relaxed. As we are, that's the first time we're doing this. I mean, Jeff's an old hand. He's come in, you know, he just segues in. He knows that we're coming to the bit where so we're going to move, Jeff, to the Q&A, are we?
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, I think we've had a few questions come in, so I thought it'd be a good chance to get into some of those, hear your views on some of the questions people have posed. As we know, this is a webinar that's a joint collaboration between GTR and LIBF, so we've got an audience across both communities, and we're focusing on the new COVID-19 landscape. So a question for both you, Alex, and for Tamara, I suppose. First one, what sort of increases have you had in people taking on more qualifications? We've heard a lot, and there's a lot of peer pressure around about need to learn a new language, learn an instrument, take on new skills. I'm going to have all this extra free time. I should really undertake a qualification. And people are finding they're actually, in many cases, busier than ever. So what sort of uptake have you seen on that basis? And are there any concerns about potentially a large number of uncompleted courses as people don't really have the time to take on the qualifications they thought they would otherwise?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I do have a guitar in this room which hasn't seen much. It's gathering dust. That didn't quite work as a plan. But I think that when it's a different thing when you're doing a qualification that applies to your work. And for your potential career advancement. Tamara, you know, you talked about your experience. You know, maybe she's quite into studying, so I know that if she was to do something, she would finish it. But what do you think that the time is right now to, if you're going to do something, you've got a bit more time in your hands, even though you're slightly busy at work?
I think if you take it with a realistic approach, if you have a plan, you know what your day is, you know what time you have available. If you decide to use your commute time, as I said, my commute time is 2.5 hours. If I dedicate that to learning something new every day, then that's not really cutting into other areas that I would have before. It is important that you're realistic and you don't decide that you are going to come out of quarantine 3 months later and you're a lawyer or a doctor, a heart surgeon. It's having a realistic views as to what you can achieve. Look at the time that you can cut out each day to make that happen, or each week, if that works better for you, and then find something that sits into that. It might be a course that is a few hours, a 3-hour course that you learn something new for that day, and you build on that when you realize that you can afford to have 3 hours a week to contribute to something or to dedicate to something else.
Well, that's a good point. I think in the world of the trade world, people are quite good at making plans. So structure out a part of the day, because if not, things tend to slide, don't they?
Yes.
So yeah, good point. Jeff, does that answer the question?
That does answer the question. Thank you very much. Next question, which is a good one. What sort of practical advice do you have for people struggling to get their CPD points, particularly as webinars and online offerings tend to be so much shorter than physical events? And there's also quite a lot of content about it at the moment. What are the best advice for choosing which webinar to go to and how to keep those points coming in? Are there going to be changes on the requirements in light of a more virtual environment for people learning?
That's a good question, something that we have been trying to help with, because a number of organizations that we partner with around the world organize various seminars, physical seminars. I know, for example, the ICC does in a number of countries where that enables CPD points. A lot of these have had to be either cancelled or postponed, or some of them have been made into virtual seminars. And I know that GTR has done some, they've been able to get the CPD, continuous professional development points, that are used for recertifications. And we are at LIBF, we have put some things onto our website as different channels that you may not have been aware of to get those points. So it's something, and I know my colleagues are listening to this, something that we need to, it's a very good question, it has been raised. So I'd like to take this offline and then go back out again and stress this to our students, because I do know it's an issue. So whoever raised that question, thank you. And I promise, by promising, I will make sure I do something to stress again the various opportunities. We just had a newsletter released last week, and that gave some pinpoints, but let's make sure it's more obvious. And if anybody has an issue with that, they can contact me on LinkedIn.
A related question actually regarding that is exams, and is there going to be a facility for exams going online as well? I think some people are dialing in from certain parts of the world where it's still a physical requirement and things are on hold. The longer this goes on, we see exams going online as well.
Yeah. So that relates to the remote invigilation, but that as a word is a word I don't really know what it meant. So that in terms of going online, we are looking for the on-demand exams. So that is CITF, International Trade Finance, Supply Chain, Compliance, and Cert Pay. They are ones that you can sign up for whenever you want, and you can do the exam whenever you want. But at the moment, that would involve going to a centre, normally Pearson's, and physically going there and doing it. You book a slot, a bit like you do a driving test, and you go and you have a slot and you do the exam, the theory on a computer, and then you go into the car. Well, the same way you have to book to do those exams. But we're looking at, and we're accelerating this process, and some are already starting at LIBF, but the trade ones before autumn, so before October, they will be done as the ability to do it remotely, such that you could do it in an office or at home. Now, it's not everybody wants to do that. You probably wouldn't want to do an exam if you've got 3 kids that could be running around in the background when you're trying to focus on an exam for your career. But it may be when the offices are open, you could do it in an office, such that people do not have to travel in the bigger countries very far. So it's better for everybody, better for the environment as well. So that is, the problem is with CDCS and CSDG is the ability, those exams require some sort of paperwork because of letters of credit and guarantees. So we're looking, we're accelerating the project to get those done where you still have to go to a center, but you'll get it done electronically so that you'll get the results more quickly. But we're definitely looking, this whole COVID issue has accelerated the digitization across all trades, so the supply chain, as well as even the education side.
I think we've got a few practical questions coming in. A good one here is Is there a minimum age for the courses? It sounds like someone might be looking to add LIBF to some homeschooling or something in their question. So is there a minimum age? And
a child prodigy out there?
Potentially, yes, it does seem so.
Or maybe it's like an old trade hand is wanting to nurture the future. To be honest, that's one I think I have to come back and I don't think there is. What I think, in Tamara has done, most other people are doing it when they're in that world. One of the things I've talked about over the years is the lack of trade education from an early age in some countries. So for the countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, trade is just part of what they do. And so children, they know what a letter of credit is or a guarantee. I certainly didn't until I went into banking. And I don't know about you, Tamara, before you joined HSBC, you had your career changed. Did you know anything about trade before that point?
Absolutely nothing.
And so if somebody wanted to have a qualification, that's great, but would they have the context around it from the work environment might be more tricky. But they could still do the learning. They might not want to do the exam, potentially. You've got an A level and CDCS. I don't know, but I don't think there isn't a minimum age. If that person, I'm definitely interested in how young that person is that they're thinking about. I'd definitely like to speak about it further, because there is a whole part about trade education for schools and make it. I try to make it more interesting for my daughter. Explaining about how things move from one country to another. So I'm a big fan of educating on trade from a very early age. So I'm supportive of that, but maybe our qualifications it's like throwing somebody in the deep end.
Yeah, quite possibly. I should probably stress to everyone online as well that Alex's details are available via the GTR website for connecting on LinkedIn, and feel free to get in touch afterwards, and also with Tamara as well. Slightly different direction of this question. LIBF is obviously focused, at least in this instance, on trade professionals and development of those working in the sector, as well as other sectors, whereas bodies like the ICC form the policies for trade and trade finance. How closely linked are the two organisations as a rule, and how have they been communicating during this time in terms of conveying any policy changes down into the profession?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I started at LIBF, having worked at two large banks, I wasn't so aware of the amount of collaboration that happens at LIBF. So we collaborate with various parties for each of our qualifications. For CDCS, that's the ICC, but there's the Trade Advisory Network, BAFT, all these different organizations. So we collaborate with a lot of organizations. And then on the ICC side, I'm on the working group in the UK. I've applied to join the Trade Finance Compliance Group and also the Guarantees Group. And what's interesting about that is that previously, from HSBC and Santander, where I've worked, there would be colleagues who would be a part of those groups. But as somebody at LIBF, I like to think I'm more of a neutral party. So I can listen to various things going on. And what has been interesting over the past few months, a lot of the conversations relate to issues around COVID and how it has impacted the policy, and the need to adapt some of the policy related to issues around pandemics. Because whilst we're facing this pandemic, unfortunately, it's likely that other ones could happen in the future. But the way we approach this will enable us to be better prepared for the future. LIBF is very much involved with ICC and is very pleased to be helping with that whole piece.
Right. This next question is more about personal development. How do you see the process for promotions and recruitment evolving the longer this goes on as we fully embrace this new normal? Would you have any advice for institutions and individuals on how to go about this? And is there any sort of playbook for that might ever have been devised?
Right, that's an interesting question. I mean, I do know that some people who are conducting job interviews using Zoom, because, you know, unfortunately, across the whole workforce, people are losing jobs, and so they're looking for jobs. So they're doing interviews, and that could be multiple, you know, being interviewed like this kind of format. But then it's also the ability to find potential roles. I mean, LinkedIn seems to be very much the way to find things, but promotions, that's a tricky thing. I wonder if that relates to the fact that, you know, in a work environment, you know, you're working with people, and they can see you working, and you can speak with your peers and your managers, and maybe there's not so much of that chance for the interaction, and that makes it more difficult. So that, you know, if somebody's able to, this does sound so slightly self-serving, but if somebody is able to show that they have gone that extra mile to do that the work to do a qualification, that I would think would help with the ability for promotions, but also into getting new jobs. You know, a lot of people that do our qualifications are hoping to career development, but they're also, you know, using it potentially as it looks good on their CV. Some organizations will, they will just look at the qualifications that somebody has had, and there'll be some that they will want. So if you're running a guarantees team, you might want CSDG or LCs, CDCS, and then you won't speak to anybody unless they have that qualification. And that's possibly going to be the case in the future. So, you know, I think it's a case of, it's very difficult. I don't know if that, you know, I'm not sure if that what the whole purpose of the question was, but it's definitely not as easy because you weren't having that physical interaction. You didn't have the ability to networks with people that would be interviewing or promoting. So definitely a trickier space.
And I've got a follow-on question for Tamara here, which what has Tamara's experiences been so far in terms of internal engagement, whether it comes to any training or development at her institution at the moment? Have any plans been unveiled? Obviously, no one's sure how long this current situation is going to go on for, and there does seem to be suggestions that office-based workers could be asked to work from home, well, for a long time, if not, you know, on an ongoing basis. Has Tamara had any engagement from her management in terms of that internal development?
Nothing at the moment. We're still, I think they're still deciding how best to go forward.
But in HSBC's defence, they are speaking to various parties. So one of them might be us, in terms of they're looking at, you know, a number of banks are looking at that opportunities, and that's where I talked about the virtual training. But you raised a good point, because it's not only about, you know, the professional stuff. There's also training needed potentially about how to operate in this very different space. You know, when I joined HSBC, we had a lot of personal development training about just the way you carry on, but it's a wholly different approach you have to take now. So it's an interesting environment.
This leads us on to the next question, which is related, which is, do you expect more specialism within trade finance evolving in the coronavirus era?
It's very likely, to be honest. You know, one of the things that has been accelerating, you know, on the tech side is there's various companies that are doing doc checking. So Compend, TradeStream, and the one I know well is TradeSun. My friends are working there, and all those companies are doing doc checking using AI, and that whole agenda has been accelerated because in the event of illness, you have potentially less checkers. There's going to be a situation soon when, you know, when trade picks up, there's going to be a whole load of documents. So the volumes, maybe not the actual financial volume, but the count of documents is likely to go up. And then will the workforce be able to cope with that? So these AI tools can help with that. But it doesn't get rid of the fact you still need people at the end. And it's not about getting rid of checkers. It's about getting checkers to be super checkers, to be honing their craft. So therefore, there might be a need for more qualifications for those people. So the tech is moving on, but there still needs people to be doing it.
In terms of more technical aspects as well, someone is asking here, can we expect to see greater automation and digitization in trade, which I think we will anyway, and we had already been, but going forward, how do the compliance aspects, how are they expected to change as a result, and will that feed into those qualifications?
That's good questions actually today. So with all the qualifications, we're adapting them all the time. Based upon the environment, and there's no doubt that with all the things that are going on will be then some of the ICC will make some adaptations, and we will ensure that all feeds into our qualifications. On the compliance side, and this is something that I have a personal interest in, having done some training in the past, is that the criminals are always trying to stay one step ahead, and you've seen it's in the past, and now it's happening with COVID. So fake shipments, even shipments have been the actual shipments have happened, but they haven't been of the right quality. And when you hear about that shipment from Turkey, you wonder if various trade tools could have been used to avoid that situation. But that's not actual criminal activity. But you can be assured that the criminals are looking at ways to advance, and they're using this whole situation to stay one step ahead of the compliance agenda. So that it's always trying to catch up, and our qualifications will always adapt to the environment. But it's a very good point. As tech moves forward, so do the criminals.
Absolutely. A couple more questions. We're coming to the end of this, so thanks to everyone that submitted these. The last two, I'll go with the first one, which is an interesting question. Has there been any LIBF consultation with the banking sector in terms of those new guidance likely to be issued for people returning to work, and in terms of personal development, where you see that panning out with the government's advice on what people do? There's various documents passing around. Is there engagement in terms of those people's personal safety and security, or is it purely about the technical development?
There hasn't, I'm afraid I'm not aware of it, but there hasn't been that engagement, I don't believe, but if I'm wrong, I will go out and let people know that. But I think that companies are looking at it as individual companies, and I know for a fact as a company that we are able to work from home. We're fortunate in that respect, and that we as a company do not want, as an organization, do not want to put pressure on the transport network. So we will be working from home as much as we can for the foreseeable future. Whereas other companies don't have that ability. So I think each company is looking at itself as individually. We haven't been asked about that specifically.
Okay, that brings us probably to our final question, I guess, and it's a nice one for both of you to hopefully be able to answer. As a trade finance professional, what are your priorities in the age of coronavirus, and how have these changed?
Tamara, do you want to?
For me, it's remembering that your customer is at the heart of your business, and how you go forward in providing a level of, yes, it's Corona, but you still need to provide a level of service, not only to your customers, but to the other shareholders in your business. Not everyone can use, say, a Zoom or anything else. So it's having those creative solutions to problems that you had even before Corona, that's exasperated by Corona and its effects.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with the customers, are very important. So that's whether that be the banks who work with, the partnerships, but also the individual students. And the main thing when it boils down to it, I think what is the most important is that your family and your friends, that everybody is safe. And by doing various things using the technology that we have, we can help maintain that. So, I mean, when it boils down to it, it's about everybody being in good health, and that's the main thing. And if they can be healthy and maybe being educated in the interim and develop further, well, that's great as well. But, you know, there's also, you know, the chance to do other things. But the guitar, I don't think the guitar is going to happen to be I'm busier than ever, and I'm enjoying it. But because by being busy, actually, if you're in this, you know, home alone type environment, you're better to be busy.
Well, it's a bit of a shame on the guitar, but great to hear that everyone's keeping busy in the current climate. And thank you both. So that brings today's webinar to a close. Thanks to Alex and Tamara for their time, and to all of those who submitted questions. Sorry we didn't get around to addressing all of those. And this webinar is also organised to coincide with the new LIBF webinar series. More details coming with that soon. Lots of webinars and other activities coming from GTR, which is great. Please do try and tune into those if you can. Various other activities you'll be made aware of too. But until then, take care, and we look forward to seeing you next time.